Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. So guys, I got rid of the beard because I seen some salt and pepper coming in, and I want to try to retain the illusion of my youth for as long as humanly possible. Okay, it's fleeting, I know, but when my kids start calling me grandpa and making fun of me, saying I look like an old man, it goes to my ego a little bit. So I'm going to try to fool the people for just a little bit longer as to regards with my real age. Now, I want to talk about what's going on right now because I seen this video the other day of this guy who apparently went to go and volunteer from the whole Reddit army. And some of you guys have probably seen this video. It's been circulated a lot in the interwebs. And talking about how they were basically taken out. They had the military base taken out, the munitions depot taken out by cruise missiles, a whole volley of them, completely destroyed the place. Dozens of people were killed, unfortunately. And that was a rude awakening to a lot of people who thought that they were just going to go over there. It was going to be some kind of cakewalk that they see in the movies or in the video games, or has been in the case in every other American conflict, from Vietnam to Iraq to Libya, to wherever the case might be, where you have a supreme full spectrum dominance over the skies, over the battlefield, and the casualty ratio between the enemy and us is always like 10-1, meaning for every one of us that we lose, they lose 10. Okay, that's what we're accustomed to because we're so used to having the technological upper hand. But Russia has said, just wait a minute, we haven't brought out the big guns yet, the hypersonic missiles, the cruise missiles, all this stuff. And this is a reminder to NATO and to us that we're not messing with a adversary who is fighting an insurgent war. In fact, they are the ones who have air superiority in that place. And we are actually the Iraqis. We are the insurgents, the underdogs, the guerrillas, the asymmetrical fighters. This is a reminder as to whose backyard we are in. And a lot of people have been sold on this lie that we are winning over there and that the Russians are just a bunch of incompetent buffoons who don't understand logistics, they don't understand planning. And there's so many YouTubers and videos who are really milking this narrative for all it's worth, when the truth of the matter is that you almost do a disservice to Ukrainians by saying, oh yeah, they should have just, the Russians should have been able to conquer the place in 3 days. No country of that scope, scale, and size has ever been conquered in less than 30 days. And no country. I mean, talking like Poland in World War II, Germany took them 35 days, and an overwhelming, and we're talking about overwhelming, far more overwhelming than what you have in Ukraine right now, okay? It does Ukrainians a disservice to say that they're just going to be these pushovers and they should have been overthrown in 3 days. No, anybody with half a brain knows that with the weapons that they have been supplied for the past several years by NATO and its allies, and all the fortifications that they've made, should have easily permitted them to have lasted this long, especially when the approach of Russia has clearly been something a lot more surgical, where you're not trying to damage the infrastructure, with the exception of some cities like Mariupol, where apparently that's where the holdout of the whole Azov battalion, the far-right guys who actually have Nazi tattoos and all. It's not even a conspiracy anymore. I don't think it ever really was, because Vox and, all of these independent media agencies, have done documentaries about it over the years, how these guys are on the payroll. And so they hit them hard, and they hammered that place hard and indiscriminately. But for all the other cities, they're being very selective. They're trying to create these corridors for people to get out of the city. And just to remind people that this was an illegal invasion. This was not the best option for Russia, I don't think, at this point. I think even in light of their national security concerns, I think there was much better ways for them to deal with this. This was an illegal invasion. I need to make that abundantly clear. However, we need to take an accurate stock of what is actually going on the ground if we're going to try to weather the future, because the Washington generals, the people in the Pentagon, they know what the threat is. Okay, now that Russia has reminded the West of their capabilities with these hypersonic missiles that they've used, which are impossible to shoot down, they're highly maneuverable, they can evade radar, and they're basically next level things, all right? And what they could do effectively, and we're going to bring on a lieutenant colonel within the next week who's actually running for governor in the States. He's going to talk all about he's lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, or was, retired now, but he's going to talk all about the U.S.'s nuclear capabilities, and we're going to basically clear the air of any questions that you guys might have with respect to that. And because I know I made a video referencing Dr. Peter Pry's take on U.S. nuclear vulnerabilities. We're actually going to have him on the channel next week as well. We're going to have a doctor on the channel next week, not Dr. Bones, but another medical doctor who's going to talk about how you can get various types of medications before SHTF that you're going to need, chronic, real deal medications. Now, yeah, it's very important that people recognize the threat that Russia poses and the force that they can bring to bear. This is no joke. Okay, this is not like in the video games. This is not like how you just go into a place and you have this supreme technological advantage. It's not like that over there. And they've made people aware of that fact. Okay, this hasn't been that apparent because all we're seeing, of course, is one side of the story. We're only seeing the Ukrainian wins. We're not seeing, the thousands of precision strikes that Russia has been bringing down on the military in Ukraine. And I've explained the strategy before. It's very simple. They're avoiding these frontline skirmishes and engagements. Whenever they get in contact with those, or whenever they meet resistance, they pull back and they dig in. And their whole aim is to try to get to the heart. Okay, their goal is to try to get to the root of the problem, not the shoot of the problem. And the root of the problem is you go for their supply lines, you go for their munitions depots, their command and control centers, so that they can't effectively operate. And it's just a bunch of ragtag guys running around with no chain of command and no orders. And that's what they're trying to do. So that's why it appears that they're losing, because they definitely are losing the information war. There's no doubt about that. And I think they've tried to elevate that a little bit in the last week or so. You're starting to see a much different picture with these stadiums full of people who don't look like they're forced to be there cheering on Putin, which is a scary thing in a way for the West, I think, because it's showing that the sanctions that they're using are not having the effect that they thought. In fact, it could very well have the opposite effect. And I've always said, guys, that sanctions, yes, they initially will work to make a country weak, but in the long run, they actually make you strong because they force you to be self-reliant. Self-reliant in a global sense, where you are forced to make your own stuff. You can't import everything, and you can't benefit from global trade, so you are forced to do the best with what you have, and that makes you more resourceful. That makes you stronger. That makes you have thicker skin. So just remember that. Now, there's some interesting stories coming out right now. Putin orders doomsday evacuation nuclear drill. Now, this was just on Sunday. This was today, I believe this happens. So the drill implies emergency evacuation of the Kremlin's officials and Russian Federation leader by military commanders in the event of a nuclear warfare on so-called modified doomsday nuclear impact resistant planes. So Russian President Vladimir Putin sends shockwaves among Kremlin officials on Sunday as he ordered military commanders to prepare for a doomsday nuclear evacuation drill. Okay, now let's see, what else do we got here? Yeah, so this is just talking about, now we've talked about recently how there's been some suspicious plane activity with Lavrov having his plane turned around from China, over Siberia, and Putin speculation that has his family in bunkers and all the rest. So this article somewhat supports that. Again, you just never know the truth of any of these things, but it would not be surprising at this point. But there's some good news. Contrary to popular belief, if Russia isn't suffering the massive defeat that a lot of the West thinks they are, then that's actually good news from a nuclear war front, because that minimizes the risk of nuclear war, because that means Russia has more options. I would be more concerned about a nuclear war if Russia was losing the battle as the West is saying it is, which I really don't think that's what's playing out, in spite of all the information that's being pumped here on this platform and other ones, which is saying that that's the case. I really don't see that as being the case. So that's a good thing. That means that, and I know this is kind of a catch-22, but it's good if Russia isn't losing, because that means we're not at risk of nuclear Armageddon. However, if they are winning over there, that means that the Ukrainian national sovereignty is obviously under threat. So it's kind of a catch-22 situation. Either Russia wins in Ukraine, or we potentially escalate this to a nuclear war. Now, hopefully they're going to be able to find some compromise in between those two things, but let's not hold our breath out for that. Now, to confirm the information that I've been receiving about potassium iodide and personal protective equipment, here's a story. European Commission encourages EU member states to stockpile iodine pills and protective suits and other medicines. Brussels accelerates plans for EU response to nuclear war after Moscow invasion of Ukraine, EU officials say. It is, this is a translated article, so it's not a one-to-one. Earlier in March 2020, pharmacies in countries such as Belgium, Bulgaria, and Czech Republic ran out of iodine pills after Russian forces, according to Kiev, targeted and destroyed a nuclear power plant in the Ukraine. And they're basically just saying here that, you know, this is just to confirm what we've long since suspected, that they are, in fact, stockpiling this type of personal protective equipment to deal with the fallout from nuclear war, or from some sort of Chernobyl-like incident that would be caused by the exchange of fire, a false flag attack, or whatever the case might be. So anyways, guys, lots of interesting developments taking place here. We're going to see how this plays out. Apparently, there are some peace talks in the works. I don't know if they're actually going to materialize into anything. A lot of people suspect that the Russians are just stringing the parties involved along in order to basically meet their goals, because I don't think there's ever going to be a scenario again where Zelensky is going to be a trusted asset of the Russian government. I think that they're either going to have to remove him from power, unless they put him on the payroll. Who knows? Maybe here's a wild tinfoil hat conspiracy theory for you. Maybe Zelensky's actually a KGB agent, and this whole thing was just a ploy to get you know, the country under Russian control in some very weird 4D chess sort of way. I don't know. That's pure speculation, and honestly, I think it's bunk. So just let's scrap that one from the record. But for all you tinfoil hatters out there who like to be special, that one was for you. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care. Canadian Prepper out. And please go check out my most recent video that we released earlier today. It's one of those videos that we took a lot of time to make, and it was made for the common person who might not be familiar with a lot of the reasons why we prep, and hopefully it gives them the motivation to do so. So go check it out. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay safe. Canadian Prepper out.